In the serene and picturesque town of Pine Hill, the shocking murder of Jennifer Johnson reverberated throughout the community. What once seemed to be a tranquil, close-knit suburban enclave was abruptly disrupted by a crime fueled by passion and betrayal, exposing the hidden darkness behind seemingly idyllic lives. The lives of two couples, Daniel and Linda Garner, and Mark and Jennifer Johnson, became intertwined in a manner that ultimately led to obsession, deceit, and, tragically, murder. Daniel Garner, a well-respected architect, was admired for his charming demeanor and what appeared to be a flawless marriage to Linda, a devoted school teacher. Mark Johnson, a successful financial advisor, and his wife Jennifer were the Garniers' closest friends. The two couples enjoyed more than just neighborhood barbecues and weekend getaways, they also participated in a consensual wife-swapping arrangement that initially infused their lives with excitement and novelty. However, beneath this unconventional lifestyle, dangerous emotions began to simmer. Daniel's infatuation with Jennifer escalated into an all-consuming obsession, one that Linda, his wife, was acutely aware of. Sensing the intensity of Daniel's feelings, Jennifer made the decision to terminate the arrangement, unaware of the lethal repercussions that would follow. Daniel and Linda Garner had been married for a decade, and from an external perspective, their marriage seemed to exemplify stability and happiness. Daniel was a successful architect celebrated for his innovative designs and charismatic personality, while Linda, a beloved third-grade teacher, was cherished by her students. Respected by her peers, Linda resided in an enchanting house on Maple Street, encircled by a meticulously maintained garden in which she took immense pride. Mark and Jennifer Johnson relocated to Pin Hill 5 years prior and swiftly formed a friendship with the Garners. Mark, a financial advisor, was known for his outgoing and affable nature, often being the center of attention at social gatherings. Jennifer, with her striking beauty and captivating personality, was equally well liked. The Johnsons introduced a fresh dynamic to the neighborhood, and their camaraderie with the Garners flourished through shared interests and mutual admiration. The notion of wife swapping was first introduced during a dinner gathering at the Garner residence. Fueled by wine and a spirit of adventure, the conversation shifted to open relationships, and to everyone's astonishment, the idea was met with intrigue rather than dismay. In the following weeks, the concept was deliberated more earnestly, with all parties establishing boundaries and guidelines to safeguard their primary relationships. The initial encounter was both awkward and exhilarating, as Daniel and Jennifer, along with Mark and Linda, exchanged partners for the evening. This thrilling yet anxiety-inducing experience left them yearning for more. What began as an occasional experiment soon evolved into a regular aspect of their lives, rekindling excitement in both marriages. Initially, the arrangements appeared to be beneficial, with both couples seeming happier and more connected. They continued to engage in social activities, frequently hosting joint parties and embarking on vacations together, while their secret remained closely guarded, discussed only within their inner circle. The novelty of their arrangement initially brought a sense of exhilaration during private gatherings and at home, creating an impression that they had achieved an ideal balance. However, as time progressed, subtle changes began to emerge, particularly in Daniel's demeanor. He exhibited an unusual level of interest in Jennifer, frequently seeking opportunities to spend time alone with her. Linda observed his growing preoccupation but opted to disregard it, hoping it was merely a fleeting phase. Mark, too, appeared unaware of the escalating tension. Unbeknownst to the others, Daniel's fascination with Jennifer was evolving into something more profound and concerning. He found himself constantly preoccupied with thoughts of her, replaying their interactions in his mind and yearning for additional moments together. What had begun as a harmless adventure was gradually transforming into an obsession that would ultimately have dire consequences for everyone involved. Daniel's interest in Jennifer had transcended mere excitement, it had become an all-consuming fixation. His thoughts were incessantly drawn to their encounters during work meetings and family gatherings, while his architectural projects, once his passion, now took a backseat to his desire for her. He began to seek ways to be near her, volunteering for tasks typically managed by Mark or inviting the Johnsons over more frequently. Linda started to recognize the shift in her husband. Initially, she attributed it to the thrill of their new lifestyle, but it soon became evident that Daniel's interest in Jennifer extended beyond their initial agreement. He grew irritable and distant when they were not in the company of others. Johnson and his discussions frequently shifted towards Jennifer's preferences, idiosyncrasies, and habits. One evening, while tidying up after a dinner gathering, Linda confronted Daniel about his behavior. His response was defensive, dismissing her concerns as mere jealousy. Although Linda did not wish to disturb the fragile equilibrium they had achieved, she chose to remain vigilant, her suspicions intensifying when she noticed him gazing at Jennifer during social events, his stare lingering longer than appropriate. Jennifer, too, began to perceive Daniel's escalating obsession. Initially flattered by his attention, she soon found it unsettling. His touches became increasingly possessive, and his words more intimate than suitable. She confided her discomfort to Mark, who dismissed her feelings, believing Daniel was simply more expressive in his affections. Mark's indifference left Jennifer feeling isolated in her worries. The turning point occurred during a weekend retreat at a lakeside cabin that the couples had organized to reconnect and escape their daily routines. However, the trip only served to underscore Daniel's fixation. He monopolized Jennifer's time, insisting on taking her out on the lake alone, leaving Mark and Linda behind. The tension was palpable, and Jennifer's attempts to distance herself were met with subtle resistance from Daniel. One evening, while sitting by the fire, Daniel made an inappropriate remark about abandoning everything and starting anew, just the two of them. Shocked and disturbed, Jennifer excused herself and retired to bed early. Linda, having overheard the conversation, confronted Daniel once more, and this time he was less dismissive but still refused to acknowledge the depth of his feelings. Linda's frustration grew as she realized the extent of Daniel's obsession. She loved her husband but was increasingly aware that his infatuation with Jennifer could destroy their marriage and their friendship with the Johnsons. Despite her efforts to intervene, Daniel's behavior only became more erratic. He started to follow Jennifer outside of their arranged meetings, showing up at her yoga classes and even appearing at her workplace under the guise of casual visits. Jennifer's unease turned to fear. She confided in a close friend who advised her to distance herself from Daniel as much as possible. Determined to take control, Jennifer decided to end the arrangement altogether. She hoped that by doing so Daniel would return to his senses and they could all move on from this chapter without causing further harm. One evening while Mark was away on a business trip, Daniel showed up at the Johnsons' house unannounced. Jennifer was taken aback but let him in, hoping to avoid a scene. They sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. Daniel confessed his feelings for her, speaking of a future where they could be together openly. Jennifer, horrified, tried to reason with him, explaining that their arrangement was never meant to be more than a temporary excitement. As Daniel's declarations became more intense, Jennifer's fear turned to anger. She realized she needed to put an end to this before it destroyed her marriage and her friendship with Linda. She told Daniel firmly that their arrangement was. Daniel was visibly distressed as he attempted to persuade Jennifer to reconsider her stance, emphasizing the need for him to respect her boundaries and her marriage. Despite his efforts, Jennifer remained resolute. In the following days, she deliberately distanced herself from Daniel, hoping he would come to his senses. She confided in Linda, who listened with a heavy heart, aware that her husband's obsession had spiraled out of control. While Linda wished to support Jennifer, she also felt a conflicting loyalty to Daniel. She assured Jennifer that she would speak to him in an attempt to alleviate the situation. However, Daniel's fixation only intensified. He began appearing at Jennifer's workplace after hours and inundated her with messages professing his unwavering love. Feeling increasingly threatened, Jennifer resolved to confront him one final time, aiming to convey the seriousness of his actions. They arranged to meet at a secluded park, away from the public eye. During this meeting, Jennifer reiterated that their arrangement was over and that his behavior was unacceptable. She urged him to let go and move on. In a state of denial, Daniel accused her of leading him on and manipulating his feelings. Maintaining her composure, Jennifer insisted that they part ways and return to their respective marriages. Unbeknownst to them, Linda had followed Daniel to the park, watching from a distance with her heart racing as the confrontation unfolded. She observed the anguish on Daniel's face and the determination in Jennifer's demeanor. Linda recognized that this confrontation was unavoidable, yet she feared the potential consequences as the argument escalated, transforming Daniel's desperation into anger. The refusal to indulge his fantasies felt like a profound personal betrayal, prompting him to lash out verbally, hurling insults and blaming her for the ruin of his life. Jennifer, holding back her tears, stood firm, unwilling to be cowed. Observing from the shadows, Linda experienced a surge of panic. She realized that intervention was necessary before the situation escalated further. She emerged from her concealed position and approached the two, her voice trembling as she called out to Daniel. The sight of Linda seemed to pull Daniel from his fury, his expression shifting to one of confusion and relief. Seizing the moment of distraction, Jennifer walked away, determined to distance herself from Daniel as much as possible. Left alone with her husband, Linda attempted to calm him, assuring him that they would find a way to move forward. However, deep down, she understood that their lives had been irrevocably altered. The affair had reached a critical juncture, and Jennifer's choice to terminate the arrangement had initiated a series of events that could not be reversed. As the situation settled, the true nature of Daniel's obsession and the extent of Linda's involvement would soon be revealed, leading to a tragic and violent outcome. The confrontation at the park had left Daniel in turmoil. Jennifer's resolute rejection and Linda's unexpected arrival had shaken him profoundly. That night, he returned home, his mind a tempest of anger, betrayal, and despair. Sensing the brewing storm within him, Linda tried to calm his troubled thoughts, but Daniel remained inconsolable. In the days that followed, his behavior grew increasingly erratic. Daniel exhibited erratic behavior, oscillating between intense anger and profound despondency. He ceased attending work, spending his days fixated on Jennifer's rejection and the perceived injustices he believed he had endured. Linda, unable to reach him, felt her own frustration and fear intensifying. She recognized that a change was necessary, yet she was unprepared for the drastic events that were about to unfold. Conversely, Jennifer was resolute in her decision to move on. She avoided all communication with Daniel, concentrating on her professional responsibilities and her relationship with Mark. She had not disclosed the full extent of Daniel's obsession to her husband, fearing his reaction and the potential consequences. Jennifer hoped that by severing ties, Daniel would eventually accept the conclusion of their arrangement and leave her in peace. One evening, upon returning home from work, Jennifer was dismayed to find Daniel waiting for her outside her residence. Her heart sank at the sight, and she braced herself for yet another confrontation. Approaching him cautiously, she spoke with a steady yet firm voice, instructing him to leave. In response, Daniel, his eyes filled with desperation, implored her for one final opportunity to explain himself. Sensing the futility of the discussion, Jennifer attempted to walk past him, but Daniel seized her arm with a grip that was both tight and painful. She could see the madness reflected in his eyes. Struggling to free herself, her voice escalated as she demanded he release her. The commotion attracted the attention of a neighbor, who stepped outside to assess the situation. Upon seeing the neighbor, Daniel relinquished his hold on Jennifer and fled the scene. Shaken and frightened, Jennifer expressed her gratitude to the neighbor before hastily retreating inside. She then called Linda, seeking a way to navigate the troubling situation. To address the situation without police involvement, Linda, sensing the fear in Jennifer's voice, agreed to meet with her the following day to discuss how to manage Daniel's increasingly erratic behavior. The next day, Linda met Jennifer at a local CAF. Jennifer appeared exhausted and tense as she recounted her encounter with Daniel and her escalating concerns for her safety. Linda listened attentively, her mind racing as she sought to devise a plan. She assured Jennifer that she would speak to Daniel and make it clear that their relationship was over. After their meeting, Linda returned home to find Daniel in a state of agitation. She confronted him about the incident involving Jennifer, her voice a blend of anger and concern. Feeling cornered, Daniel lashed out, accusing her of siding with Jennifer and betraying him. The argument intensified, and Linda, fearing for her own safety, retreated to their bedroom. That night, Daniel's thoughts grew darker. He could not accept Jennifer's rejection and felt betrayed by his wife. In his distorted mindset, he concluded that the only way to resolve his anguish was to eliminate the source of his pain. He resolved that if he could not have Jennifer, then no one would. On a cold, clear night, Daniel made his way to the Johnson residence, aware that Mark was out of town and leaving Jennifer alone. He broke in through a side window and proceeded to the bedroom where Jennifer lay sleeping. The sight of her peaceful and unaware state ignited his rage and desperation. He seized a kitchen knife and approached her, his mind a chaotic blend of love and hatred. She awoke to find Daniel looming over her, the knife glinting ominously in the faint light. Attempting to scream, she was silenced as Daniel swiftly covered her mouth, his grip firm and relentless. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, he drove the knife into her chest, extinguishing her cries as Jennifer's life ebbed away. Daniel remained above her, engulfed in a tumult of conflicting emotions following the act. He fled the scene, his hands marked with Jennifer's blood, and returned home, where Linda discovered him trembling and disoriented. Realizing instantly the gravity of his actions, she felt a perverse sense of loyalty compel her to assist him in concealing the crime. The life they had constructed and the secrets they harbored were now jeopardized. Linda understood that their survival depended on swift and decisive action. Driven by a distorted sense of loyalty and self-preservation, she took charge of the situation, guiding Daniel to the bathroom and instructing him to strip and cleanse himself of the blood. Her thoughts raced with the urgency of their dire circumstances. They needed to act quickly to obscure the crime and safeguard their hidden life. As Daniel stood beneath the scalding shower, the water turning crimson at his feet, Linda collected his soiled clothes and placed them in a plastic bag. She meticulously scrubbed the floor where he had tread, ensuring that no trace of blood remained. Once Daniel was cleaned, she seated him and insisted he recount every detail of the incident. Despite his emotional turmoil, Daniel managed to articulate a coherent narrative, his voice trembling under the weight of his actions. Linda then formulated a plan. They needed to establish an alibi. Dispose of any evidence that could connect them to the crime. She contacted a trusted friend, asserting that Daniel had been with her throughout the evening to corroborate their alibi. Subsequently, she drove to a remote location outside the town, where she incinerated Daniel's blood-stained clothing and the murder weapon, hoping the flames would eliminate any remaining traces of evidence. The police conducted inquiries with all residents in the vicinity, including the Garners. Linda's meticulously constructed alibi withstood scrutiny, and although Daniel appeared visibly shaken, he successfully avoided arousing suspicion. The investigation appeared to stagnate, lacking any definitive leads towards the Garners, despite their initial success in evading law enforcement. The psychological burden of the murder weighed heavily on both Daniel and Linda. Daniel grew increasingly paranoid, convinced that the police were closing in on him, leading him to withdraw from friends and colleagues, ensnared in a web of fear and regret. Meanwhile, Linda, though outwardly composed, felt the pressure of their secret bearing down on her. She became hyper-vigilant, analyzing every interaction and behavior for signs of suspicion from those around them. The weeks following Jennifer's murder were filled with tension and deceit for the Garners. Linda assumed the role of stabilizer, managing Daniel's paranoia while ensuring their public image remained unblemished. She kept a close watch on the news for any developments in the investigation, feeling relieved that the police seemed to lack solid leads. However, Linda understood that sustaining their cover required more than merely having an alibi. They needed to fabricate a convincing narrative. Daniel's attention was redirected by Linda, who advised him to exhibit a greater sense of grief regarding Jennifer's death. This strategy was intended to align him with the community's mourning and to deflect any suspicion during social gatherings and community meetings. Daniel assumed the role of the sorrowful friend, speaking of Jennifer with a blend of affection and sadness, often with tears in his eyes. Mark, who was heartbroken and seeking answers, seemed to value Daniel's apparent empathy, unaware of his friend's involvement in his wife's demise. As time passed, Daniel's mental health continued to decline, with guilt manifesting in nightmares and hallucinations. He turned to alcohol in search of comfort, but it only provided fleeting relief. Concerned that he might reveal the truth in a drunken state, Linda kept a vigilant watch over him, often staying awake late to prevent him from leaving the house. One evening, while Daniel was hunched over a glass of whiskey, he broke down and confessed to Linda that he could no longer bear the weight of his guilt and felt compelled to confess. In a state of panic, Linda attempted to soothe him and maintain their composure. To help alleviate the tension, Linda proposed a brief getaway to a remote cabin in the mountains, hoping that a change of environment would allow Daniel to find some peace. The seclusion offered a temporary reprieve, enabling them to strategize without the constant pressure of the ongoing investigation. During their stay at the cabin, Linda emphasized the necessity of maintaining their secrecy. She meticulously coached Daniel on how to respond to police inquiries and interact with the public, drilling him until he was prepared to handle any situation. Linda's unwavering resolve to safeguard their way of life and evade incarceration propelled her relentless efforts to maintain their narrative. Upon their return to Pin Hill, the Garners embraced their lives with a revitalized sense of purpose. Although Daniel remained troubled by his past actions, he managed to project a more stable demeanor. Linda took charge of their community interactions, ensuring they stayed above suspicion. Nevertheless, the cracks in their facade began to emerge, as friends and neighbors observed Daniel's escalating drinking and erratic conduct, leading to rumors regarding his potential involvement in Jennifer's death. Ever watchful, Linda endeavored to dispel the gossip, fully aware that their time was limited. As the police investigation progressed, new evidence surfaced, revealing inconsistencies in Daniel's alibi. The carefully constructed world of the Garners teetered on the edge of collapse, with the truth poised to surface. Detective Mitchell conducted separate interviews with the Garners, meticulously noting any discrepancies in their accounts. Linda's meticulously devised alibi withstood scrutiny, while Daniel's emotional state appeared consistent with that of a grieving friend. However, Mitchell's instincts suggested that the full story remained untold. As weeks went by, additional evidence came to light. Forensic analysis of Jennifer's phone records uncovered a series of increasingly desperate text messages from Daniel, indicating his obsession with her. Consequently, Mitchell summoned Daniel for further questioning, pressing him on the inconsistencies in his alibi. The nature of Daniel's relationship with Jennifer was under scrutiny as he struggled to maintain his composure. He adhered to the narrative that Linda had advised him to follow, yet his nervous demeanor and evasive responses only intensified the detective's suspicions. A pivotal moment occurred when a neighbor provided critical information, stating they had observed Daniel's vehicle parked near the Johnson residence on the night of the murder and recalled his peculiar behavior. This testimony, in conjunction with forensic evidence and Daniel's inconsistent actions, prompted the police to secure a search warrant for the Garner home. During the search, authorities discovered remnants of burned clothing and blood stains that had permeated the floorboards, despite Linda's attempts at thorough cleaning. This incriminating evidence, along with the witness statements and phone records, constructed a compelling case against Daniel. The noose was tightening around the Garners, and Linda recognized that their meticulously crafted facade was on the verge of collapse. She understood that their only opportunity to evade a lengthy prison sentence lay in devising a new strategy, one that would redirect the blame onto another party. As law enforcement closed in, Linda and Daniel confronted the grim reality of their predicament. The fabrications that had once shielded them were now poised to unravel entirely, and the truth was set to emerge in an unforeseen manner. With the evidence against Daniel accumulating, Detective Mitchell readied herself to take decisive action, bringing Daniel in for another session of questioning, this time with a different approach. The strategy she employed involved presenting all the evidence that had been collected, including phone records, witness testimonies, and forensic analysis. Under intense scrutiny from Mitchell, Daniel felt increasingly cornered and began to falter. Mitchell intensified his questioning, suggesting that a full confession might lead to a more lenient sentence for Daniel. Overwhelmed by guilt and relentless interrogation, Daniel ultimately broke down and admitted to killing Jennifer, recounting his obsession, the confrontation, and the moment he lost control. In his confession, however, he also implicated Linda, detailing her involvement in concealing the crime. He explained how she assisted him in cleaning up, disposing of evidence, and creating an alibi. Recognizing the potential for a comprehensive narrative, Mitchell arranged for Linda to be questioned as well. Initially, Linda denied any participation, but as Mitchell laid out the evidence corroborating Daniel's account, she understood that her fabricated stories had collapsed. She eventually confessed to aiding Daniel, justifying her actions as stemming from a misguided loyalty and fear of losing everything they had built together. The trial of Daniel and Linda Garner drew significant attention in Panay Hill and the surrounding areas, with the courtroom filled with reporters and spectators eager to witness the resolution of this tragic story. Daniel faced charges of first-degree murder, while Linda was charged as an accessory to murder and for obstruction of justice. Both entered guilty pleas to their respective charges. Daniel received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, whereas Linda, benefiting from her cooperation and clean prior record, was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 10 years. Mark Johnson, left to navigate the aftermath of his shattered life, found some comfort in the justice served but continued to grieve the loss of his beloved wife.